It's been a fantastic weekend and there's only one place to start. That is with the Manchester derby. United scored twice in 2 minutes to snatch a win and heap yet more misery onto their bitter rivals Man City.
Chelsea also had a good Sunday winning against Brentford and capitalising on the points Liverpool and Arsenal had dropped the day before.
But it wasn't a good weekend for Wolves or Southampton. Both suffered defeats and both have since parted ways with their managers Gary O'Neill and Russell Martin. We'll get into all of that and more over the next hour, but we do have to start in Manchester, where Ruben Amorim came out victorious in his first Manchester derby. What a mad, mad game at the Etihad. Here is how the table stands after 16 games. For Liverpool, City slipped down into 15th place. And this is here, Leanne Sanderson is here, and we're going to start by talking about the Manchester derby a bit later on. We should start with you on the Manchester derby. Man United are back, Leanne. They're back.
I'll just read a newspaper.
No, we're not back.
Good times are rolling.
That did feel good yesterday. I mean, let's be honest, the Manchester derby wasn't the most exhilarating, thrilling game. But I'll take that.
It was a good last 10 minutes.
It was. Yeah. And the quality, I think you said it. I heard you on the TV yesterday saying we couldn't really anticipate, you know, what this derby was going to be like. And it's true, like, the quality of both sides. But honestly, like, Ahmad yesterday, unbelievable. You know, Bruno Fernandes steps up. He should have scored earlier on as well. About 10 minutes before that, you'd expect him to put that in the back of the net. Manchester City were poor, but Manchester United, I was delighted for the fans, everyone there. It just felt nice, you know, to finally
This is what the fans wanted when Amorim came in, because he's only been there a month, so there aren't going to be wholesale changes. And they said, look, we know that challenging for the top honours is going to come a bit further down the line. But in the short term, we want to be competitive in these big games because Manchester United's record, particularly away from, terrible. And they've been really bruising defeats over that time by City, by Liverpool, by teams that really hurt. And this was a competitive game for Manchester United. Even if they'd lost it at the end, they'd at least turned up for it.
Yeah, and I think the same at the Emirates against Arsenal as well, until the 55th minute. I know Arsenal took it to another level, and it was almost like, how are Manchester United going to score? But I think the decisions he's made off the field, you know, Garnacho, Rashford, leaving him out of the squad entirely was a massive decision. But he came out, he fronted up, he spoke about it and was put to rest. I think if this was under Eric Ten Hag, things would have been spoken about still till now. Even if Manchester United would have won that game, they would have still been talking about the players left out. But again, you know, you want to build a good culture at the club, and I like Ruben Amorim. He's only been there a month, but I like what he's doing. I think a lot of the media like him. He seems a pretty likeable guy, but he has to get results. And from what I'm seeing, what he's doing, it's almost like he's trying out certain players in certain positions to then see what he's looking for. And I like what he's doing so far. Not getting carried away, but we'll enjoy that.
Yeah, but you've got to enjoy the moments when they come along. And the point about Amorim and the decisions around Rashford and Garnacho is an interesting one, and particularly from a media point of view, Darren, because he was very, very honest about his decision as to why they weren't in the squad, and he outlined his reasons.
But he was very clever as well about it, Kel, as well, because I think for him to leave them out for this week and suggest that a new cycle begins on Monday means that he's given himself wriggle room, and he hasn't created a set of negative headlines around Rashford that neither he nor Rashford or their club can extricate themselves from. And to a large extent, he's right. You know, I think Rashford now, he has said, has to want it. But clearly, from the point that Rashford is in, and I'm sitting next to two sportsmen here who tell you all about the fact that in any sport, you can lose form, you can lose confidence. In any job, all the people watching around the world now, you can lose confidence at anything you do at any point at which you're doing it. But it's how do you get out of that? And sometimes it's just by putting one foot in front of the other. He might need a little bit of help, but he might need a little bit of stick as well. I still do think there is a good player there, and I think Amorim does as well. Otherwise, he wouldn't give him another chance. Just a point on you mentioned the media as well. The media like him, but why do the media like him? He's a fantastic communicator. He's engaging, he's compelling. He has that charisma that comes with managing a big club. And I think if you look at all the big clubs around world football, particularly in the Premier League now, all the successful ones, the ones able to engage fans, engage players, engage the media, they've got that X factor about them, and that's what Amorim has. You could listen to him all day.
And he at least appears honest and straightforward, which you can imagine goes down extremely well with the players. Clarity
you need. I know we'll get to Pep in a second, but it's almost... Pep Pep Guardiola is very similar as well. He's very honest. He said, the problems, they're all my fault. So what he's done, he's taken away from everyone the whole idea is Pep under pressure, is, who's to blame for this? Pep's taken it away from that. He is a guy who understands how to work the media. Amorim does already, and that's the reason why I think he'll do a good job.
Also as well, I do think by being honest, you almost buy yourself a little bit more time in certain aspects because when you look at the end of almost Ten Hag's reign, everything was like a closed shop. The whole Jadon Sancho thing, he never quite understood what was going on there. Is he back in? Is he not? And I do think for Ruben Amorim, he speaks really well. He comes across really well. And I think when you have a big decision like leaving out Rashford and Garnacho, because it's monumental, those type of decisions. I think if you just come out and say why you've done it, I think a lot of people, there are going to be people that don't agree with it, but there will be people going, do you know what? Fair play. If that's the reason why, then I can respect that. And as long as that continues, then I think that'll be perfect.
And do you know what, Darren? I think, and I've said this on the show before, Man United are a superpower in world football. To play for them, to even play for them, you have to be a top player.
Yeah.
Now, I think...
Well, not anymore in recent years. In recent years, not so much,
but that's
right?
the point. The standards have fallen because there have been a lot of players that have been allowed to play for Man United that I wouldn't necessarily suggest are at the standard they would have been during the time when they were dominant in English football. And I think as far as Amorim is concerned, I liked what he said there. He said, this is a huge club. We've got to raise that standard, particularly at a time when people are losing their jobs. He gave great context. It was a masterclass, really, in PR, if you like, because he was hitting all the touch points. He was getting all the pings of admiration. I think in terms of the standard to be reached by players, Rashford... Listen, I'm a huge Rashford fan like anybody else.
Yeah, me and you always have arguments about this in the green room.
We do. But, I accept that Rashford, for him to get back to where I think he can be, he's got to reach that standard on a week-to-week basis, and every other player...
Do you know what? But he's got to want to do it. And
exactly.
I think that's the problem, is that... Because I'm with you, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Rashford fan, but we've seen, certainly a couple of years ago, when he's at it, he's unstoppable. He's pretty much unstoppable. But I think his body language in recent times tells me he's not someone that's desperate to get back to that level.
But he's playing like three good games a season, though.
But you
there's
two,
a player
right?
in
You
there.
two, you're both footballers, right? So, because I see it everywhere. But I see it all the time. And you know what it's like when you're in a run of form. What is that like? Because everyone says he's got to get back to that.
Yep.
Ex-pros say it, and I'm always fascinated. Well, you're ex-pros, you know what it's like.
But I think he's been in this run of form for a long time. I think the inconsistency, as a centre-forward, we're always judging our games upon how many goals we score, right? Some players throw away their boots. I know Jermaine Defoe used to throw away his boots every time he didn't score in a game.
But did you go through that?
Not as bad as this, where you go like 2 or 3 seasons where you're playing 3 good games a season. My standards were higher than that, and I also demanded that from myself. And that's why I say, like what Benty's saying, it can't just come from the manager. You have to look from within. And Gary Neville made a good point about the pressures of playing for Manchester United in the 90s. Like David Beckham, the amount of pressure he was under, the amount of scrutiny he was under, that was what it meant to play for Man United.
They were in a squad of players that was filled with superstars who did perform every week. So if they dropped off, if David Beckham has a bad performance, yes, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. But there are enough players around him that it's not going to have the same... I'm not saying one's better or harder or easier than the other. It's just not apples and apples.
Yeah, but I think the players have to look at themselves, is the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Like, you can't always look at the managers all the time and think it's down to the manager. Like what Benty said, it's up to you to kind of... I've never really been in a situation where it was like 2 or 3 years where you're kind of playing 2 or 3 good games a season. Realistically, everybody's saying, oh, there's a player in there. There's a player in there. Similar to Paul Pogba, there's a player in there. I'm not saying Rashford's like the worst player to ever play for Man United, but the inconsistency...
I'll tell you what...